Welcome to Florida Focus, a college football podcast. My name is Brandon. I'm a lifetime Seminole fan.
I am Chris, and I'm a content Gator fan.
We are putting aside our differences as rivals to bring you the fantastic world of college football throughout the Sunshine State. I always love to hear adjectives, Chris, and it kind of tells me where you're going to go with your impressions on the game. So
yeah, I like to just give you a peek at what hand I'm going to lay in the future.
Nice. I like it. Well, yeah, so a lot to get to. We have Gators winning at home against FAU. Florida State in a crazy wild loss hosting Notre Dame that goes into overtime, so some free football for us. And then some other teams to talk about around the state. But as is tradition, my good sir, I'll let you go first. And what are your thoughts on the Gator victory and, all the thoughts that our Gator Nation are asking themselves now? But go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So, we're here. We're in college football. We're in the season. I love it. Gators beat the FAU Owls 35-14 in a game that I still cannot put my finger on how I feel about the game, other than I'm okay with it. I'm content. I wasn't too excited. It wasn't too optimistic afterwards, but I wasn't going, oh well, our season's over. Just kind of okay. Some questions were answered, and some still yet to be answered. But I was okay. I was okay with the overall performance. We'll go down the list of positives. We'll talk a little bit about it, and then go over the negatives. The main story coming out of this game that you're going to hear from Gator fans and maybe nationally is Anthony Richardson, the backup quarterback, maybe the QB controversy between him and Emory Jones. And it wasn't the best night for Jones. It wasn't really, other than Richardson's highlight plays, which were fantastic. He isn't perfect either. He still missed some guys deep, but he was the story of the night because he made some electric plays. He definitely is a playmaker that I'm interested to see how we use him down the road. Just the fact that he's sidestepping people, he's jumping over people without any effort. He had a 73-yard run where he's celebrating starting at the 20-yard line. He was that fast. He's got all the physical attributes, and it's easy when you're the backup, right? It's easy to come in and do that. But everyone loves him. If you're a Gator fan, all you've been hearing about and thinking maybe is Leakin' Tebow. I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but we're used to that. So that's anytime you have two quarterbacks vying for the job, Leakin' Tebow are going to pop up.
Okay.
But he did good. He did well. He had a stiff arm, a long run. He's so athletic that even at the end of the half, they put him in the jump ball formation where he runs down and try to get the Hail Mary there. So, I'm really excited to see where he fits into the offense. So it was good and fun to see him and a playmaker on the offense. Another thing that was a huge positive was the run game. Talk about if you had told me that a Dan Mullen team is going to run for 400 yards, I thought you were crazy, especially after last year.
Yeah.
I knew we were going to run more. Dan even said, I want to run more. We're even built to run more. But 400 yards, I get it to FAU, but 400 yards is a lot of yards on the ground. So that was kind of just, talking about a pendulum swing on offense, man. From breaking records in the pass game to breaking records in the rush game. Now, I personally would like to find it somewhere in the middle there, but still kind of cool to see. Richardson goes 160. Malik Davis, 100 yards and a touchdown. We haven't seen that burst and that consistency in a game from him since his freshman year. So it was really cool to see him being explosive out of the backfield. And it was also pretty cool to get to see all the reps from all the running backs. We go 5 deep. We can go 5 deep, I should say. So it was good to see them get some reps. And obviously some of a big chunk of the 400 yards comes from Jones and Richardson as well. But still cool, still impressive. I know it's a lesser opponent, but We said in the offseason, can you get some push in the run game versus the lower SEC teams and teams like FAU? And the answer is yes. Now, with Georgia and Alabama and LSU, they're different. We get that. But, hey, I'm content because I wanted you to run against FAU, and you did. So, and the last thing that I really want to touch on positives is just the defense overall. It wasn't the best. It was more of a bend, don't break. What I would say dominant, but much improved. Much improved overall. And a big question mark last year, or thing that hurt us last year, was consistency in the D-line, especially D-tackle. I mean, we were rotating in 5-6 guys to this game, which is good. We're trying to build up that depth on the D-line, and they seem to be pretty dominant. Gravon Dexter coming up with 2 fumble recoveries, Zachary Carter as well, and some of the new transfers on the D-line getting some playing time too. So I like that. They shut them out. They shut a FAU out through 3 quarters, and it was not to the 4th till FAU was able to put some points on the board. But not dominant, but definitely effective. Front 7 seemed pretty solid. Ventrell Miller, quiet night, but yet he led the team in tackles. So it's pretty cool. I was really impressed with the defense. Again, we have a lot to work on. They're not the top tier, but I asked you to be better than last year, and so far you have.
So far, so good. Yep. Yeah. I mean, any day you force 4 turnovers is going to be good. And there was kind of a lull in the middle of the game. For a long time, it looked like maybe the Gators just might get a shutout. We kind of knew better than that happening. Mm-hmm. But, at least you pitched yourself into that situation, if that makes sense, to use a baseball reference. And you only held 2 guys at 50 yards rushing apiece, so they don't get a lot of success moving the ball on the ground. And, yeah, I think they should be excited. The defense is what stood out to me as well. And you kept N'Kosi Perry in check. He simply just wasn't able to move the ball on drives. So, yeah, a lot to look forward there.
Yeah. And Perry did a decent job, and he was able to scramble a little bit. But, I mean, we pretty much kept him in check, and Ford as well. Ford got a couple of bursts here and there, but overall, very pleased with the defense, and still got some improvement. But, I mean, I liked what I saw from them. Negatives, I mean, everyone's heard it, Emory Jones. And I don't think his night was that bad, but when you're struggling a little bit, when you're the starter finally, and then you have your backup who's jumping over people, stiff-arming people, I think it makes you look worse than maybe you really are. I mean, those first 2 drives, I mean, he came down and got points on the board for us. Mm-hmm. Looked very in command of the offense, very calm. Had to scramble a bit, missed some guys, but those first 2 drives and it was like, oh, this is easy. This is going to be a cakewalk. But then Richardson came in 3rd drive of the game, and this was pre-planned, Mullen said, and everything was going swimmingly. He's even driving them down. We're into the red zone. Okay. And then his helmet got ripped off, and in comes Emory Jones. And I think that just messed everything up, because immediately Jones throws a pick on a bad read. I think if he drops it down, he might have a check down to his running back. He might have had a touchdown. But instead, he squeezed it in there. And then after that, the wheels just kind of fell off on the offense for Emory Jones. And it was weird, man. The first quarter Jones and second, third, and fourth Jones were totally different. And I don't know if it just messed with his confidence or what. It reminds me a little bit of Felipe Franks, kind of, where he can ball out and play, but he makes one mistake, and good luck for next 2 quarters, because he's going to struggle.
Interesting.
Now Trask did the same thing too early, but Mullen was able to coach him up, and he. So I hope it's more. I know we weren't going to get Trask, but I didn't know we were going to get Franks. So I know it's one game, and I'm not overreacting. If this continues against South Florida, then maybe some reaction there. But I'm not too worried. Hopefully it's just the first game jitters. But I saw the promise in the first couple drives, but just kind of shaky after that. Then, obviously he threw another pick. He was missing receivers, kind of throwing behind them a little bit. So mentally he was just out of it. So hopefully he can get back in it. I think a lot of Richardson kind of made his mistakes look bigger. I mean, you're going to get more talk when your backup's running people over. So it seems like right now everyone's saying Jones is the guy. Mullen, Jones, Richardson, they're all saying Jones is still the guy. But, I mean, there's a lot of grumblings in Gainesville already. But hopefully he can get that turned around. Another thing that we need to work on, there's no real playmakers at wide receiver. Copeland was the guy who was slated to be the next big playmaker, but he had one catch, and no one else really stepped up. Whittemore had a couple drops, and some of them were behind him, but I mean, I blame 50-50 receiver, quarterback. Other guys shorter, I think, had a drop as well. So I would like to find a playmaker on maybe one or two at wide receiver. And I mean, I don't think even the tight ends were even targeted the whole game. So that would help Emory if a receiver or two stepped up. And the last thing, just on the defense, although it was better, still haven't found that DB number 2 or 3. I'm still trying to work that out. Elam looked kind of slow and behind. So the secondary still has some work. And just in general, there was some mistakes you got to clean up. That 4th and goal, I'm you know me, I'm more conservative. I say, well, you have 14-0, kick the field goal, go up 17-0. They go for 4th and goal. There was some miscommunication coming from the sidelines. Apparently, they gave Jones the wrong signal, and Mullen was like, "Yeah, he got the wrong signal, but he should have figured out that it was the wrong signal and called a timeout." He was like, he should have noticed that it was. So it's kind of both, coaching and Jones. I mean, two interceptions, and in the points late. At least one of those touchdowns was, I think, a direct result of 2 horrible penalties, late hit penalties that don't need to happen. So we need to clean some penalties up. So still work to work on, stuff to work on, I should say. And I think Mullen, in general, he seemed like he treated this game kind of like a spring game because we didn't have one. We didn't have the orange and blue game.
Yeah,
I just felt like he treated it like a spring game. He got not only Richardson in early, but we're rotating secondary receivers like second quarter. We're seeing just the backups come in, sprinkled in here and there. And I think it was a little bit, maybe a little on the conservative side, but so I just felt that he treated it like a spring game, and maybe that's kind of what you need to do since you didn't have one and you have an opponent like FAU. But overall, I'm content, I'm pleased, and I'm happy with the W. Sure.
I mean, with Richardson, maybe he needs to get a little more practice throwing. You mentioned some drops there. Whittemore, I think, would be a good number 3 on the team, but it's too early to tell with wide receivers, so I get that. But I don't have really anything else to add. I think you nailed the analysis pretty well. So.
All right, well, I try. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. All right, so I want to shift over to Tallahassee.
Yeah, what a crazy weekend, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you get into it in just a second, but as a non-Florida State fan, I mean, this right here is, I think, an early front-runner, well, obviously front-runner, but I think it's going to be a finalist for Game of the Year. When we do our award shows at the end, I mean, this is right up there. Another one, I mean, that we'll talk about in a minute, UCF Boise State as well, but this game, I mean, just with the whole passing of Bowden to the atmosphere, you have these blue bloods, you have a ranked team. It was the almost comeback. I mean, then on top of all that, you want to throw in the whole story of Mackenzie Milton.
Right.
I mean, it just had the only thing that didn't go right for Florida State was the very end.
Yep.
That was the last piece of the puzzle missing, but still a great game. But I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, man, the atmosphere was electric. Having the fortune to be there also helped in this one. And I know you have a couple of questions about some of the calls in the game. I'm going to probably answer those within my analysis, so just hold tight.
Yeah.
I think I already know 2 of them. So, as is our tradition, I'll do positives and the opportunities for us. This Florida State team looks completely different than last year. Yeah. And I think everyone has to remember that this is the same team that was 3-6 in 2020. a team whose two of the 3 wins, was Duke and Jacksonville State. So there was not a whole lot to look back on in 2020 and say that was successful, and we can build off of that. In fact, we are still in the process of rebuilding, but the one thing I'm going to point to, despite the fact that our defense gave up 38 points, the defense has shown much improvement. We essentially stopped the run for Williams, and he just didn't have any success. He didn't even get to 75 yards. He did catch one pass where he took for 50 on a screen, so his overall yards looked pretty good. And he did field some punts, but still no numbers there, and we were able to limit him a lot. The defense and the tackles for loss and the sacks, man, my goodness. I think I counted 5 sacks and tackles for loss. I was just continually impressed on how we were reading their offensive line and taking advantage of their missteps, getting third down stops early. You can't underestimate the special teams play that kept us in the game early on, the punting mainly. As the game progressed, you're like, okay, you were mentioning how the Gators were kind of treated as a spring game. I think the first 2 drives for us kind of felt like that to me. Okay. Where I was like, they're trying something different. And it was early on, I could tell. I was like, the goal is not to have Jordan Travis run the ball. He was constantly in the pocket, scrambling with his feet. He only had one really major run, and that was right before he left the game in the 4th. So they really tried to approach this as he's going to try and throw more, and the defense is going to have to figure out if they want to actually bring pressure or not. Mm-hmm. And so that was interesting. We did get a couple of lucky reviews in this game. It kind of kept us in like the opening kickoff for the second half. Like, did he fumble? Did he not? Right. Mackenzie Milton threw a bad snap that ended up being an incomplete pass. We'll talk about that later. And there were just some other things here and there. We did get bad luck on one call where we got called for a late hit. Whatever, it was the role in the field. But we had some chunk plays here. 60-yard touchdown pass to Ja'Kai Douglas to start the second half. He had a 90 or was it 89-yard run to get us on the scoreboard by Corbin. Man, there were a lot of things that I really liked about this team. The wide receivers, as I kind of suspected, not huge contributors. They actually did come through in the clutch on some drives when we really needed, like, hey, by the way, we're running here. We really need to mix it up with a pass. Like McClain caught one, so that was kind of comforting. Helton contributed a couple of catches. He actually even converted this 2-point conversion, Mm-hmm. And just running by committee, not only did we have Corbin, we had Ward stepping up. We did have Travis run when he had to. Mackenzie Milton, whoever thought I would say that, actually ran one down and kept a drive alive. Yeah. So a lot to be excited about with the running game. I still have some doubts on the wide receivers. Now, next week against Jacksonville State, they're going to run all over the D-backs there, but that's not going to show me anything. So those are most of my positive things here. When you come back from down 18, there is certainly a lot of hope, because that's exactly at the point last season we just completely gave up. NC State comes to mind. I think we had a very similar experience with Notre Dame last season. They just kept running over us. I think we were allowing something like 7-8 yards of play in Notre Dame last year. And this year they just couldn't get it done. A little high on the passing yards for our defense, but the fact that you made them one-dimensional really changed gears.
Yeah. So one thing that really you mentioned the 18-point comeback. You're absolutely right. I was gonna mention, I have my notes here. That's not the FSU. I mean, that's not the FSU that we know, especially against a team that's higher ranked than them. But I thought it was over. Like, I had written them off completely. But they outscored them 18-0 in the fourth quarter. So kudos to them. Now, my question is, well, I mean, we'll find out next week. But is this the FSU team that beats UNC and loses to other teams, or have they really turned the corner? Do they just get up for this game because of everything going around, or have they really? Is there a slight change in the program?
That's what I want to know too. And I think if health wise, that's big if, offensive line stays where they are, defensive line stays where they are, then this is probably a team. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, right? Don't go over your own skis. the floor for Florida State this year is probably 4 wins, and the max is probably 8. After a game like this, you're going to be like, oh man, 8 for sure, 9, maybe 10, maybe they win the rest of them. Let's taper expectations here. They played a great game against a top 10 team. Don't get me wrong, but there's still some hurdles and some things to clean up for sure. And that's actually I don't have the answer to that. The question will hang over me for about another 4 to 6 weeks before I can tell you for sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, I will say it's funny. We're talking about this game, treating it as a victory. I mean, at the end of the day, they still lost, but this is like the moralist of all victories. I mean, this is as close as you come to a great victory without actually winning it. So it's kind of tough to I can't get a gauge on what really helps though is, I mean, the ACC with Clemson and UNC and the Wheel of Destiny.
Here we go. Yep.
In the way that Florida State plays, you have to be looking at, we lost, but we played great, and the road ahead of us isn't as hard as we thought it was. Even Miami, now other teams obviously can get it together, but I mean, you got to feel a little bit hopeful. I mean, if I'm Norvell, I'm like, hey, we played a great game, but we see if you do that every time, we can compete in the ACC because everyone else seems to be a little bit behind as well. So which FSU team is it? We'll find out, to be determined. But I mean, great effort by them. I will give my hats off to them. They fought. The game was playing out until the fourth quarter exactly how I thought it was going to be. FSU is going to throw every punch. Notre Dame is going to throw punches back. Third quarter, Notre Dame beats them. Outscores them 21-6, and is up 18. I'm like, okay, this is how I thought it was.
Yeah,
give them a good fight, but then, they're just too much. But credit FSU. I mean, I think a lot of it had to do with Mackenzie Milton. He's a different quarterback than Travis. He has a little bit of an arm. And I think it just kind of sparked the crowd. I mean, you could speak to that when he came in, and obviously it sparked the team as well. But yeah, I mean, a lot of positives in this game. Even though it's an L, it's like, okay, if you subscribe to more victories, or if you want to make yourself feel better, I mean, there's a lot on the field that makes you feel better and gives you some confidence looking forward, especially now that the schedule seems a little bit easier.
Yeah, so I don't subscribe to moral victories, but I do. Okay. But I do believe this was a pick-me-up because this team outperformed any expectation I had, and I wasn't down on them. I think I was pretty fair analysis, right? Notre Dame by 9. The FSU, they have a small chance to pull this off, but I thought of all the games we had, this was our best chance for the upset. I just didn't think we'd do it. Unfortunately, I was right, but it was way closer. Obviously, it goes into overtime. You only lose by 3. Speaking of, there were some opportunities. Let me get. Why is it more fun to talk about these? I'm not sure, but sometimes it is. I mentioned the first 2 drives, kind of filling it out. There was some pretty porous defensive play a lot of times in this game. Michael Meyer, their tight end, just pretty much did whatever he wanted. However, he did drop a pass that probably would have won them the game in regulation. So
that was game over. Yeah, I think.
I was like, they were in field goal range and they had a timeout to burn. That would have been it right there. So we kind of got lucky with that, but didn't end up mattering. Some penalties here and there, but overall, no bad composure penalties. By that, Chris, I mean there was only 1 late hit out of bounds. There were no personal fouls. We played a clean game. Besides the 3 turnovers, I mean, I really don't know how we were in this game with 3 turnovers like that. I mean, that's obviously in the third quarter where Notre Dame took advantage, and Travis Jay, our best player, didn't look like it at all times last night, did he? Because he got beat twice, and they happened to be, in the end zone. So, oops, got to get that cleaned up. He did make a play on 3rd and 5 at another point in I think it was the third or fourth quarter. So it forced a punt there. And he was returning our punts. I don't think he actually even returned. I think he fair caught all of them. Gotcha. And he padded the stats. The Hail Mary that Notre Dame throws at the end of the game, which was 15 yards short, he does pick off, whatever. It counts, I guess, but I don't feel like... Those are always the ones on defense. I'm like, he didn't really earn it.
Yeah.
But whatever. We'll take it. Yeah. Jordan Travis, he doesn't have the pocket presence you want yet. He has very, very happy feet, and he tries to spin himself out of danger, and he's just, unless he takes off and runs from that, he hasn't had success hanging back. 3 interceptions, obviously, one of them didn't really hurt us too much because it was on 4th down. They actually lost a couple yards of field position, but whatever. Mm-hmm. Got to clean that up. Kyle Hamilton, their safety, he knew exactly where he was going. With only one, he actually did make one mistake, that really long touchdown pass to Ja'Kai Douglas. He actually was, Jordan Travis able to look him off there.
Right.
So he actually has some ability where he can kind of play with the secondary and make them miss, but he just can't do it consistently. Some other things, we missed a 2-point conversion. On some of those touchdowns, especially for Meyer, we're just like, and sometimes Williams, like, golly, how many tackles did we miss in that play? 2 or 3? It looked pretty. I mean, there was some. I forget which touchdown it was, but I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to be on Notre Dame's highlight reel the rest of the season because he just made 2 guys miss. That just looked ugly. I knew the linebackers were a weakness, and that this game kind of proved it.
Right.
So wherever you go, there you go. Kicking woes, obviously, I'll actually double back to that in a second. And I'm going to bring this up as an opportunity and a positive at the same time. Ready for this? Ready?
Okay.
4th and 2 at your own 33. Do you go for it? So I really think the answer is yes. Norvell did this several times last season, and most people probably forgot because FSU ended up losing those games or was already out of reach. It is not a terrible decision to do that. The numbers kind of support, and the advanced metrics say don't give the ball back, especially when we were, I think at that point, we were down 11 and they were scoring at will. We're like, well, we need touchdowns. It was just the play call was just pretty bad. You should have just run the Wildcat that seemed to work before, but some kind of a little dip out to a tight end who you hadn't targeted all night doesn't really make sense. McDonald had 0 catches, FYI. So that was probably the bigger issue with that. And, of course, they scored pretty quickly afterwards, and that's when they went up 18. Like, uh-oh, here we go. So I actually put that in the positive and opportunities category. And then the other one, because I'll go ahead and address it now, in overtime, you have a play where it looks like Mackenzie Milton fumbles, and then we lose a lot of yardage. So Fitzgerald sets up for a field goal. I think it was 49 or 50 yards. Before the kick, okay, let me just paint the picture here for you, Chris.
Okay.
Earlier in the game, to tie in regulation with 40 seconds remaining, Mastromanno hits a 43-yard field goal. That was his career high. He did not kick long distance. Plus, let's also remember, as I said, both kickers last year, 5 of 9 on the season. They split duties. There's not even a full-time kicker. So you had to take your chance to tie it there. You didn't have a choice. In overtime, if I have a chance to shorten a 49-yard field goal to about 33, I'm going to take that shot. But everyone's like, oh, he kicked it and he made it. And I was like, well, he was just practicing. There was no pressure.
Right.
And so it was really just kind of a comedy of errors where, like, the referees weren't reviewing it in time. Mike Norvell was trying to get on the field to try and get some input and see if they could look at it again and use his challenge, which he did, and then we ended up missing it. My opinion, the last drive of the game, Chris, when we're down 3, I was thinking in my own mind, if we don't win this in regulation, we're not going to win OT. Kicking was one concern, but also when you go to OT, you shorten the field to, 25 yards? And I think there's a new rule this year. You only play 2 OTs, right? And then you trade 2-point conversions?
Yeah, I think so.
None of that favored Florida State. You might say, oh, they're running the ball well, it would work, but I still had a lot of concern. Plus, I don't know why this popped in my head, but Notre Dame beat Clemson in overtime last year, so I knew they'd used to it. And I can't even remember the last time we played in overtime.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to maybe disagree with you a little bit on some of the things. The secondary, I'm on board. Travis, I'm on board. The 4th down though, it's 5 minutes left in the third. The way things are rolling, I wouldn't give Notre Dame another opportunity so close. Now, had they converted, then we're not talking about it. But I don't like this decision. I'm a little bit more on the conservative side, but But icing the kicker, I kind of see the points you're making. It's a little bit closer, still messing them up. But I will say, honestly, I was shocked that they lost in overtime because the way things were rolling for Florida State in the 4th, I was like, oh, if this thing goes overtime, Florida State's winning. Because not so much Florida State, because Notre Dame also, well, they looked like they were giving into the pressure. Offensively, they seemed like they were tightening up. Like you mentioned, that tight end dropped that pass. I just didn't think Notre Dame had it in them because everything, the momentum had shifted to Florida State. So I was shocked. I know the kicking game better than I did. That's probably why you were a little bit hesitant. But I was just seeing when I was on the field, I'm like, oh, I mean, this thing goes overtime. I don't see how Florida State loses this game. But then I forgot that you can ice your kicker. Now I'm gonna get your opinion on this. I think this was that led to the timeout and the icing the kicker. Was it the play where they called it a fumble, or then they changed it back to an incomplete pass?
Yes.
Okay. So I will give Norvell credit for challenging that. That was a positive challenge because I thought it was a fumble just right away. I thought it was a fumble.
Mm-hmm.
No need to challenge it. So credit to him for challenging it. Hey, let's take some time and look at it. But I thought it was a fumble. Now, if it wasn't a fumble and it was an incomplete pass, then would that be intentional grounding? Because he wasn't outside the pocket. It didn't go past the line of scrimmage. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a receiver around there. So if you make that not a fumble, then is that intentional grounding?
So, you know what we were all thinking at the game? We were like, oh my gosh, this looks like the Tuck rule. Yes,
that's exactly what when I was texting someone during the game, and I said, Tuck rule?
Mm-hmm. That was my thought, because I was hoping, just like you were thinking, I was like, well, they don't catch on to the fact there was nobody in the area.
Yeah.
Oops.
So, but that's one of those weird. It's just a weird play, though. It looked weird. It felt weird. Like you reviewed it, and I was like, I don't know, man. Yeah. I was getting shades of Brady while they were showing it. It's just a play you don't see that often, and I think that they were just kind of like, well, they did the best they could, and but because it's such a rare play, we're still scratching our heads like, well, what was that? you know, what was the real call? Because you don't see it that often. It looked weird. I mean, on TV right away, it looked like a fumble.
Yeah,
and then reviewing it, I was like, well, I kind of still feels like it's a fumble. And then I was like, I can kind of see where they're going with it, but if that's the case, is no one going to say intentional grounding? But I don't know if that's a reviewable thing, though. Is it?
I don't think it is. That's a judgment call.
Yeah, okay.
Because, a receiver in the air, quote unquote, whatever. And then it's magnified by the fact that the kicker, just as a practice swing, hits a 50-yarder.
But no, was anybody rushing?
No, the play had been blown dead, and there was no pressure at all.
I know, but still, I bet it makes sense now. But I mean, at the time, I'm pretty sure people around you were ticked.
And you want my honest opinion?
Because they don't have that time to factor in everything.
Right. And my honest opinion, Chris, I don't think the kick would have mattered. I think Notre Dame would have scored no matter what they needed to win the game in that first overtime. They had plays to give to get touchdowns, and I think they just really played conservative because they knew the kicker was going to make it. I mean, I'm not going to say they laid up on purpose. But they knew they had no pressure. Like, make the kick, good. If not, we just win it.
They're pretty confident in their kicker. Yeah, you can tell.
So, I don't want people to think that I have no heart to mention the Mackenzie Milton story. And I don't think I have to recap it to anyone who listens to us, because this guy since he was recruited from Hawaii, he was at UCF, and he's their hero. But, man, to see a guy come out in with, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, because of, I don't know, the same reason the Gator switched quarterbacks. Your quarterback loses his helmet.
Right.
And you're like, oh, here we go. And now, people were watching this the entire night because, A, his story could be written into a movie if you really wanted it to.
Yeah.
And then, B, you started to see, obviously, Travis not only throw the 3 interceptions, but after that long run, I saw him get up, and I was like, he's not 100%. He could have ran more or even drew contact, but he decided to run out of bounds early. And he was limping. So we actually had to have an injury timeout for him. The next play, helmet comes off, and he never even re-enters.
Right.
So Mackenzie goes and finishes the drive to get us into the end zone, and then the next drive takes us into field goal range to tie. So, man, this is really where Florida State is going to excel from last season, because last year you're going third and fourth string on your depth chart QB wise because you had just literally no options. You had Blackman losing you games early. Travis comes in out of necessity against Jacksonville State to save you. You had to play Rodemaker. He started a game. You had to start Purdy. It's a bad look, especially when you're going that far down. Sometimes you can go third string, shades of Marcus Houghton, show back to 1998. But when you're going fourth string, that just, no one's ever heard of a fourth string quarterback story. It just doesn't exist. So good for him. I mean, the Milton Magic, I'm going to try and trademark that before the game goes any further.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But he leads them to the, he has improvisational skills that Travis does not with his arm. Yeah. He knows where everybody is in the field. I think the shovel pass was one of his best plays of the night. I also heard someone say, I think we were driving down 3rd and 7, bad snap, and he scrambles out of the pocket and throws the pass away. Most people were like, well, that was his best play of the night. Because if he takes a sack there, we're not in field goal range, and then the game never even goes in OT.
Yeah.
So
very heads up. I mean, you can just tell that he's played a lot of college football.
Yes. You can tell he played on a winning team. Now, my concern is those 2017, 2018 squads he was a quarterback for, they had much better wide receivers than we do. I talked about just how we don't have playmakers there. Literally, some of the guys he played with at UCF went to the NFL. And none of our guys, God bless you, wide receivers, none of them go in the NFL. Like I said, I think they're going to be situational and they can make plays when they absolutely have to. But we're going to have to be very creative and kind of run a little bit of trick plays to get the wide receivers even involved. So, as I'm seeing here, the starting lineup for next week, this was just released. Quarterback, Jordan Travis or Mackenzie Milton. So they're going to do that again. And honestly, I think they're going to do it the rest of the year. And you're going to need them both.
Okay. I was going to ask you later, who do you think should be it?
Whoever's healthy.
Whoever's healthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think you probably don't. I think they didn't announce Jordan Travis to start until warmups. That should be the plan the rest of the year, unless it's an obvious injury.
Mm-hmm. Or Milton just makes it a no contest. It's just like you have to put this guy in.
Right.
Which I could see. I really could see that because he's the new guy, but he's a veteran.
Yep.
As long as his knee holds out, I think I get it. Maybe start Travis this game, but if Milton continues to do what he's doing, just a short bit is a quarter, right? It's a quarter, but against a top 10 team, he balled out. If he continues to do that, it's gonna be fun. QB controversy is the theme of this episode.
Or.
Yeah, OR. Yeah.
Yep.
So. But all in all, just a phenomenal game. Hats off to Florida State. Couldn't pull it out, but I think you should feel very optimistic if you're an FSU fan.
Yeah, I certainly do. And I really think that a bowl game, you really should now kind of readjust the expectation to say, I think 6 wins really should be your standard, assuming everybody plays the way they did against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I really think that a bowl is something, like I mentioned this before, but like a bowl is something that you should I may not get your hopes up high, but that's something you can reach. It's especially with the landscape of the ACC now. I think that's something you definitely can reach.
Yeah,
became a lot easier after this week.
Indeed. All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. I could probably talk for hours, but I won't. And,
yeah.
Yep. As you mentioned earlier, I did want to take just a couple minutes to explain some of the UCF Boise State game. Another thriller in Orlando. Yeah, wow. So yet another team coming back from an early deficit. And, when you go down to your UCF and you're looking like this is a great offense, and then all of a sudden, whoops, that turned into a 100-yard return on a pick six. Okay. Now what do we do now? You had some worries, but then UCF just stayed in the game, constantly came back, ran the ball. Who even knew this guy named Bowser existed? Yet he rushes for 170.
Good night. He had a great game.
Yes, good night. Ooh, I like how you did that. Nicely done. Good night. Yeah.
I try.
Yeah. In a game that was delayed 2 hours and 45 minutes by weather, did not start until 9:45 Eastern Standard Time. So we're like, you're welcome, Boise fans.
Yeah, I know, right?
From 2 time zones away. I was there, and I think I was texting you guys during the delay. I was like, I don't know this game. I was like, can someone look up when's the latest you're allowed to kick off? Because we may not make that deadline. But it was crazy. So it looks to be a team that's very different. They've slowed their pace down. Heupel was very much like Wake Forest. So let's snap as much as we can with 30 seconds left on the play clock. And Malzahn was very open. He's like, it's going to take the guys a quarter to get adjusted. And you're going to see a little slower pace. But, man, it is kind of fun to see a 4 wide spread, and then you're going to run up the gut for 8 yards. Yeah. It's kind of refreshing for a team like this. But, yeah, they make the comeback, and then they win. They hold on to win by 5, 36-31.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key turning point there was that touchdown right before half. Gets it within 10. And I think you got the ball back I think they got the ball back to start the third.
Yeah.
They go down and score, and that was when it was just like, it's just like the video games that we talk about. We always, I think you said maybe Jimbo did that on purpose.
Yeah. The sandwich.
Kicked off on purpose. Yeah. That was the big swing there. Again, phenomenal game. Just everything. UCF does this at least once a year where they have some crazy game. Who was it? Memphis last year?
Yep.
Where it was like overtimes and the kickers like fighting people at the end. And
Yep.
Some guy was knocked out. I don't know. It's just some weird. UCF does this, and it's entertaining. I tell you that.
Yeah.
Strange game, and that, I mean, they came down out of the gate, marched down the field, and Gabriel throws that probably the worst pass he's ever thrown for that pick 6. And I was like, oh, it changed the whole game for 2 quarters almost.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, Boise State's going to roll them. But they turned it around, figured it out, adjusted halftime, and just dominated the second half.
Yep.
To Boise State's credit, they made it interesting late by scoring a touchdown. But you just knew UCF was just, by then they were just rolling. And again, like you said, Bowser, this guy can ball. And I mean, early candidate for Player of the Year for our award show.
Sure.
Yeah, the way he's thick too. I don't know what his height and weight is, but he was thick and just didn't go down easy, and he looked poised too. I know he's a transfer.
Northwestern.
Northwestern, yeah. So yeah, I think they can find a playmaker in him, and good for the Knights.
Yeah, I mean,
exciting game.
The running back and position in the running game was a big question mark because UCF didn't really get a lot of production from it last year. The one guy they had returning, he was let go from the team before the season even began, and I was like, I don't even know who they're going to run back there. Yeah. Gabriel ran a little bit, but yeah, Bowser just took over, and you needed him to run the clock out late.
Yeah. What a nice 1-2, Gabriel and Bowser. That's a nice 1-2 punch in the backfield.
Yep. Jalen Robinson started to finally get involved later in the game. I called it was like late second quarter. I was like, I don't even care if Robinson gets a catch here. They just need to target him. Sure enough, next play they did. Yeah. And it was pretty good coverage on the defense, but that started to set the precedent. Okay, now we can throw it on field, and then they just took off from there.
Right.
Yeah, a couple of mistakes here and there. Both quarterbacks threw some interceptions they didn't need to. By the way, that late interception that the Boise quarterback Bachmeier threw, he was past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
When I watched the review, I said, "Whoa, that play shouldn't have even counted," but the rest did not catch it. So UCF caught a break.
So I was thinking this. So they say they do call it. Does UCF have the ability to decline it, or is it like a dead ball situation?
That's a good question. I would think we would have our fans and send us their thoughts on it, especially also like since we're disagreeing on how Florida State managed the end of the game. They should tell us that as well. I honestly don't know because it obviously would have favored UCF to keep the interception.
Right. I didn't know if they even had the option to. Because for a split second, I saw what looked like him stepping over the line, and I thought, does it matter?
Yeah.
Because isn't UCF going to decline it? But then I was like, they never called it, and yada yada. Anyways, interesting. Just when you think you've seen every play,
right?
You haven't.
The sport throws you something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Knights get it in Orlando. Jeez. Okay, so a couple other teams we can go through pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
No need time to. South Florida losing woes continue. 45-0 shutout on the road against NC State.
Yeah.
That must make the Gators feel really good about going into Tampa next week.
A little bit better, yep.
And Long Island loses to FIU.
And also that other team down south played Bama.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, okay, I take that back. The other team down south, they went onto the field with Bama. That is a fact.
Yes, and Alabama did whatever they wanted.
Good night. Okay, I'm starting to get a little worried about my pick earlier from the Florida-Bama game. Starting to get a little bit worried about that because I was like, oh, if it's Bryce Young versus Emory Jones, I'm taking Jones. Bryce Young is pretty good. Like 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, pretty good. Yeah. So I mean, the Tide just rolled Miami.
Yep.
They just didn't stand a chance. And just when you think Alabama's going to have to take a step back, they said, "No, not this year."
Yep.
We don't rebuild, we reload. Yeah, Miami just could not figure it out all game.
Yeah. And Deer King actually had a pretty decent night target-wise, 23 or 31, but just not a lot of yards there, and he did throw 2 picks. So,
right.
You know, that just halts everything. And they don't even get 250 yards of offense. It's
right.
Yeah, pretty ugly.
Yeah, very much so. So that should do it for week 1. Glad that we had it. Now we get to look at week 2.
Yes, indeed. So, Gators playing the Bulls. Give me your thoughts and goals on this matchup.
Things I want to see. I mentioned earlier, Emory. Can he bounce back? Is it a fluke? Can he and Richardson deal with the noise this week? Good thing is, it seems like Richardson, Jones, and Mullen are all on the same page. They seem Jones and Richardson seem like they're friends, just like, hey, that's my guy, I got his back, type deal. So that's kind of cool. That's good to hear. It's Jones' team still, and I want to see, can he shake the cobwebs? Can he, look past a shaky start? So we'll see. I want to see what he does. I'd like to see us air it out more. It was great that we can establish the run. I know that it's good that we can go to that, but I do want to see us throw the deep ball a little bit, maybe on first down, then knowing we have 2 more downs to run it or throw some shorter stuff. Jones did throw some over the middle things, and he was kind of hit or miss on that. Threw some balls behind. Can he go down the field? I want to work on some crossing routes. Just air it out a little bit, and whenever Richardson does go in, I want to see him throw it too. We saw the moves he made with his legs, and he made one good pass, but he also missed a couple guys too deep. So it's just in the passing game overall. I want some receivers to step up. I want to find that 1 or 2 guys. Xavier Henderson looked pretty explosive on one of the punt returns. I'd like to see him get a ball in space and see what he can do.
Okay.
And maybe incorporate the tight end zipper gamble. I want to see a little bit more passing yards, knowing that the running game is still there. I would like to find who the returner is. A few guys fielded it, but it looks like Henderson's our best bet. And then just continuing to figure out our secondary. Who is our cornerback or DB number 2? And still trying to figure out the safety situation. Mullen rotated a lot in. I expect him to rotate even more. Continuing that. Don't know who. A lot of young guys, inexperienced guys. I think he's just trying to treat these first 2 games as a spring game and practice for Bama. That's what I just feel like he's viewing it as, and why not? And I mean, you're seeing that South Florida put up a goose egg against North Carolina State. Makes you feel a lot better. I was really concerned. I still am kind of concerned because South Florida, I mean, they're at home. They do get up for their competition sometimes. And could it be a trap game? Yeah, with Bama looming. But I think we have too much. It's weird. We have so many small things to work on. I think that favors us. Because if everything's running smooth, we might overlook them. But we have a lot of stuff to work on that we want to implement in this game. So I think our defense continues to roll. I think we can still give up some chunk yards, but still keep them at bay. I think we win easier than I thought.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go UF 41, USF 13.
I was going to ask you, do you think South Florida scores?
I think they do. I mean, it's real hard it's rare to shut people out. It's rare to get shut out twice, too.
Yeah.
I think they're going to figure it out. We still have, like I said, I think we're going to see second and third stringers on defense early in the game. Going to make some mistakes. Going to give up chunk plays.
Okay.
We like to pressure, which leaves our corners one-on-one. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they score. We might make another mistake on offense. So yeah, 41-13.
Okay.
Florida wins versus the Bulls.
I'm going to take 48-6. So I don't have any faith in the Bulls.
No.
Speaking of playing Division II schools, Florida State plays Jacksonville State. Not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just work on getting your wide receiver some experience. Get Parchman involved. Get McLean involved. Keyshawn Helton may be your star guy, but he's got to show it here. And then work on your defensive middle of the field. Your linebackers need a lot of practice here, and this will be a little bit of an interesting game in that it's only 6 days off instead of 7.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see too much concern here, given the Notre Dame performance. As I mentioned even a week ago, this kind of game would scare us, and Florida State can't take Jacksonville State lightly. So as long as they don't do that, which I have no reason to believe they would, we're going to do fine. But give me 52-14 Jacksonville State.
52-14. Yeah, I'm thinking the same. I feel better, about them playing Jacksonville State. Although you said a little bit shorter week, I'm really interested to see, can they match that emotion of last week? Can the coaching staff get them level? So I think you're going to see the run game just dominate. I don't think they're going to have a letdown. I'm going to go, 45-17.
Okay.
45-17.
And another one, I really don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. UCF is going to host Bethune-Cookman. They handled business at home by taking care of Boise State in a close game. But Bethune-Cookman, this will be a chance to kind of spring game it up and work on your second and third string. Give me the Knights 66-10.
I don't know if I got a score. I think it's going to be something similar to that. But yeah,
Okay.
Knights easy.
All right, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. The other game that actually will be competitive this weekend, might be the only competitive one, we'll see, is the fact that FIU hosts Texas State. And I'm actually going to take Texas State to win this game. FIU did show they can beat somebody, Division II, Division III, whatever they are. But, they didn't show a whole lot there. They didn't overly impress. And I'm not quite sold the Panthers just have enough to even win 3 or 4 games a year. So give me Texas State.
My initial lean is FIU, but just kind of glossing over, Texas State lost to Baylor by only 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Baylor's not the greatest team, but they're still a Power 5 team. So it's a tough one. This is tougher than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to go Texas State as well.
Okay.
That's a close one.
What about Miami hosting Appalachian State?
Now that game, a little bit intriguing game.
Yeah, not boring.
Yeah. I almost want to go with Appalachian State with the upset, but I'm going to stick with the Hurricanes. I think they bounce back. But I think it's going to be closer than the experts think, though.
Yeah. App State did start off with a decent showing, but East Carolina, to me, played them a little too close. So give me Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. And then Florida Atlantic and Georgia Southern.
Yeah, this one could be interesting. Me personally, I'm going to take the Owls here. They did get some of the things they probably wanted ironed out against the Gators, but since it was just such a better team, they just didn't have probably the success they normally would against like Conference USA type of opponents. But yeah I like the Owls.
Yeah, me too. I like Perry and Ford. It's a good combination. I think they can lead them to victory. It might be close, but I'm going to go with the Owls as well.
You nailed it. Rushing attack probably gets them there.
Yeah. So is that it? Do we miss anybody?
No, we got everyone there.
Everybody USF play. Okay, yeah, cool. Cool.
Yeah, very good. Well, Chris, we're here. It's happening.
Yeah. In it.
So with all the things that we didn't see eye to eye on the Florida State ending, and the rule about passing past the line of scrimmage. So where can fans reach out to us on their thoughts on that and just anything else we talked about?
You can go to FloridaFocusPodcast.com.
Perfect.
And hit us up.
Indeed. A couple other reminders to our listeners. Thank you again, as always, for your support. You can reach out through the website to us any way you feel comfortable. On Twitter, a reminder, you can give to your local diaper bank to donate to those in need in Central Florida. The link is there. We pinned the tweet sometime last year. If you're still inclined to support the show, which 3 people have done so far, Jared, Ingram, and Tyler, thank you so much for your continuing support. Yep. Patreon.com/FloridaFocusPodcast.
Yeah, and I would say, if you are a listener to the podcast, and we're getting a lot of traction, I think I noticed on Facebook, especially, but tell somebody, share it, like it, let someone know, whether you send them a link or word of mouth or whatever it is, let them know that we're here. If they're interested in college football, specifically in the state of Florida, that we are the go-to place. So FloridaFocusPodcast.com. Say it again.
Beautiful. Well said, sir. Well, Chris, thanks as always. This is a great way for us to start this season, and everything looks a little bit better than it did last week, so I know I'm thrilled.
Yep, me too.
All right. Well, this is Brandon saying go Noles.
This is Chris. Go Gators.